Good day, Professor Bandalaria and classmates. I am here now to present to you my book review number one. And the book review I have examined is entitled Education in Times of Crisis, Effective Approaches to Distance Learning. Again, I am Irvin Joed V. Biason presenting today. So my main reference came from the Chartered College of Teaching, again entitled Education in Times of Crisis, Effective Approaches to Distance Learning. And the main objective of this book review is to determine and describe the implications of the content or the proposition of the book that I have reviewed with regards to distance education management. So this book basically made a study at the height of the pandemic, and it made use of an online survey as well as a focus group discussion in order to get the teachers' views and experiences to the Chartered College of Teaching in England or United Kingdom. Data collection basically happened at the height of the pandemic, specifically in March 2020 to March 2021. Interestingly, the study found out several things. Amongst the most important ones rather, are number one, 2% of the schools which participated in the survey actually continued to operate face-to-face classes in spite of the lockdowns and the border closures. Primary schools recorded three times higher rates with regards to the use of pre-made asynchronous teaching materials as compared to secondary schools. This gave the researchers possible insights and assumptions that maybe primary schools have been more ready with regards to these kinds of risks. And for them to mitigate these sudden border closures, they already have pre-made asynchronous teaching materials, and it was easier for them to actually shift to asynchronous teaching than secondary schools. Overall, 38% of the teachers said that students actually made the same progress with regards to distance education when comparing it to face teaching, while unfortunately, more teachers or 42% of the teachers felt that students actually made less progress in distance education compared to face teaching. The study was also able to uncover several common difficulties in the sudden shift to distance education. If we are going to examine other literatures, these book review that I have done actually would point to the same common difficulties experienced by other teachers in the sudden shift to distance education. In this study or this book, what are the four common difficulties? Number one, teachers encountered technological difficulty with regards to more or prolonged use of this internet and laptops and iPads, as well as the softwares and the virtual learning environments that were necessary to conduct distance education. The second, teachers were actually complaining of increased workload because they have now to redevelop their traditional educational materials that was originally fit for classroom instruction to virtual classroom instruction. Third, teachers lament the lack of social interaction because they were so used to face teaching. Teachers did not get the feel or somehow they did not felt that the quality of social interaction in virtual learning environments equates to face interactions. And of course, students on the part as well as the teachers' observation, they were actually spending too much screen times wherein the sudden shift in distance education prompted students and teacher to interact more and use more the technology, specifically the use of the laptop and the iPads, in lieu of the absence of the social and direct contact or direct interaction, again because of the pandemic. Now, what are the implications to distance education? The material actually quoted or provided an illustration taken from Scott 2018 entitled The Evidence Informed Practice. So if you look at the illustration on the left side of the screen, according to Scott, for us educators to have evidence informed practice as to what are the best practices in teaching in times of the pandemic, there has to be an overlap of three very important variables. And what are those? Starting from the left lower corner, we need to look into the best available evidence from researches. Unfortunately, researches at the height of the pandemic were quite limited because, again, this is unprecedented and this was not somehow predicted. So, as the pandemic was happening, we are seeing more and more researches coming out, especially at the latter parts of the pandemic in 2023 to 2024. In terms of context, at the upper middle portion, we have to also look at the systems, the settings, the groups, and individual. We have to profile our learners and be able to see what are their actual experiences, where they are, their access to technology, their ability to access technology, their financial status to access these technologies. And on the lower right portion, we also have to look, of course, into the teacher's experience, such as their ability and expertise, their competence in the use of these virtual learning environments, and their professional judgment, if any, have changed, especially that the interaction now is virtual. So, for us to understand better the implications to distance education, we will actually also look into five specific points encompassing six different chapters. We will look into feedback and assessment, collaborative learning, instructional scaffolding, metacognitive scaffolding, and student support. And for us to analyze all these six, I have broken it down simpler in a simple way, such that we look at the definition of each of these variables and then what are the challenges and solutions as suggested by the researchers and also coming from the literature. So the first part is, as educators during the pandemic, we have to emphasize on feedback and assessment. Feedback positively influences motivation and understanding, according to Anderson 2004. And feedback actually develops teacher presence, according to McLevy and Gorgon 2020. So, feedback is very essential. As we always say, communication is a two-way tool, so that when students send us something, verbal or via auditory or via tactile stimuli, we also have to give them feedback. Now, what are the challenges in teaching in virtual learning education or distance education? Well, number one, there's less frequent feedback, again, because teachers are actually more swamped with actual different kinds of work. Well, they have to develop new materials, they actually have to adjust in the use of these softwares, etc. Second, there is an absence of nonverbal feedback among students because, again, the behavioral or the body dynamics cannot be entirely observed because the students are confined within the squares or the screen of their cameras. And there is seemingly a lack of engagement because students are craving for social interaction, which computers and virtual education cannot provide. So, according to the author, there are several actual possible solutions, and that is number one, we can actually develop approaches to have effective feedback strategies. By developing feedback mechanisms, we can improve feedback and provide timely feedback to our students. What are those examples of feedback mechanisms? Well, we can set clear expectations so students know what they are expected to do or execute. We can do telephone hours for consultation, provide time for this consultation, urgent resolution of technological difficulties. Again, this gives us emphasis on providing student support. And then we can also observe workable turnaround times, right? Especially during the pandemic when students were still adjusting to the use of some of these platforms, virtual platforms, we can extend to them a little bit of compassion, firm compassion, I would say. So we can extend turnaround times that are, or submission dates or deadlines that are actually still constructive and appropriate to the teaching learning experiences. Those are also part of the recommendations of the University of Illinois Springfield in 2024. Now, in terms of collaborative learning, online collaboration is defined by Bernard et al., or rather, um, leads to actual better student outcomes. So according to Bernard et al., when there is better collaboration between the teacher, and the student amongst his or her peers, it actually positive influences or positively affects academic outcomes. Now, what are the challenges? Well, number one, not all students are actually comfortable with online or virtual environment. So a lot of times we would see students turning off their camera, or when they are being called upon to recite, they will not unmute and they just keep their cameras turned off. And this actually affects their presence or social presence in the online classroom. We also have to look into the end user experience, how students are actually using virtual learning environments. There are some virtual learning environments that can provide better collaborative activities, but there are some virtual learning environments which has tools that are quite limited, thereby also limiting collaboration. So what are the suggested solutions? We can look into variations in approaches to collaboration in distance education by not limiting activities virtually. Even though most of the time we teach students virtually, we can actually also give them pair work, peer feedbacks, group discussions, opportunities for group projects so that they can spend time with their peers or classmates and work on some outputs that are aligned with the learning outcomes of the course. We also need to look into technological limitations in as far as giving them these kinds of work. On to the next chapter, we will look into instructional scaffolding. And according to the Northern Illinois University Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in 2012, instructional scaffolding supports the learning environment by prompting students to take a more active role in the learning process, thereby taking ownership of the learning event. So, since we are now moving or shifting to distance education, and as emphasized, the learner autonomy is very crucial in the success of a student. As educators, we have to provide them opportunities to give them ownership of their course, ownership in terms of the pacing of how they will go about by their tasks and readings or assignments. Now, what are the challenges mentioned by the author? Number one, there is the development of materials actually requires a lot of time, and that of course has cost implications. Number two, there is a lack of student feedback on the use of such materials. So in cases where students are given instructional scaffolding strategies, instructors or teachers failed to assess the feedback of the end user, which are the students. So, what are the possible solutions? As educators, we have to continuously develop and produce educational materials for future use. This enables us to mitigate future risks in times of natural disasters or another pandemic. And of course, we need to look into the feedback of the actual users or the end users of these materials or technologies or products. The next is the metacognitive scaffolding. So according to Western Sydney University in 2025, metacognitive scaffolding are strategies that teaches students to learn in self-directed environments and teaching them the skill to determine which aspects of their education requires more attention. Again, going back to the autonomy that I have mentioned a while ago, one also of the critical skills we have to impart our students in distance education is to teach them the ability to discern which parts of their educational journey actually need more attention, need more guidance, mentoring, so that we are teaching them somehow a sense of independence to take ownership of their actual educational journey. Now, what are the challenges with regards to metacognitive scaffolding? Well, number one, teachers actually feel overwhelmed due to workload and they rarely use metacognitive scaffolding. So, since teachers are actually encroached with a lot of administrative tasks and tasks to redevelop their existing learning materials, sometimes they fail to use metacognitive scaffolding strategies to teach the students independence. There are some teachers that actually raised doubts as to the appropriateness of metacognitive scaffolding for distance education. What are the solutions suggested? Number one, we can provide students opportunity to evaluate own learning through reflective diaries, through reflective or introspection, through peer evaluation as well. We can establish weekly schedules and task lists so that students have a structure on what to follow, and this can be guide for them to help them pace and time their educational experience or reading or their tasks for the day, so they may be able to actually use their 24 hours in a day in a very productive way. Third, we can provide clear learning objectives so that students can always refer back to these learning objectives and do a self-examination if they are meeting the learning objectives established at the start of the course. And as educators, provide them the coaching that they need and the mentoring that they need. The last evaluation will look into the student support. And according to Madeley et al. In 2020, well-being, socio-emotional development, motivation, and student engagement should be upheld in distance education since prolonged use of digital devices negatively impacts mental health, anxiety, and stress levels of students. This definition confirms the World Health Organization's definition of a person. And sometimes we only look at a person in terms of the physical aspect of the body, but we also have to look at the well-being of a person in terms of their social, emotional, psychological, cognitive, spiritual domains. Now, what are the challenges with regards to student support? Number one, there may be lack of social interaction despite of the increased screen time. So it is not safe to assume that the longer we spend in front our cameras, in front of our laptops, there's better social interaction. Because again, social interaction requires in a lot of ways physical contact or physical presence within these students. Number two, there is a lack of accountability for missed student submissions. In as much as we are extending deadlines to understand and accommodate students in their adjustment to the sudden shift to distance education, in one way, the educators actually failed to teach accountability among students who actually did not submit missed outputs. Third, there is a lack of social presence. Again, as mentioned, students would frequently turn off their cameras, and there may be a lot of distractions because these students are actually at home and they have their family with them, their pets or their loved ones, or sometimes they also have access to different technologies. Congruently, they're using their laptop for learning while they use their cell phone or their laptops or their other devices for possibly social media usage. Now, what are the solutions? Number one, we can reduce screen time allotment to only those that are essential to the teaching learning experience. We can focus on other tasks that are not confined within the virtual space, as mentioned in the other chapter, giving them pair work, group work, which would require them to visit each other or collaborate better with each other. Increase the paper-based activities, extracurricular activities to foster motivation. And if the students are complying with deadlines and turnaround times, we can use certain rewards to reinforce their behavior positively. Rewards that are aligned with policies and procedures of the educational institution, such as, but not limited to, extra points, credit points, or giving them some extra credit for turning in work in advance, or if they are able to meet deadline, they can be given rewards in the form of exemption to some requirements if again allowed by the policies and procedures. So in conclusion, what did the authors tell us? Number one, and in my again internalization, what did this book teach me? We have to consider multifaceted approach to teaching learning activities, which will address technological, social, and behavioral limitations in distance education. owing to the fact that I am a nurse, I think it is ingrained in my senses that I always look at my students as a multidimensional being where they only do not need physical nurturing in terms of education, but as educator, we also have to appeal to their other domains or other dimensions of life, such as their social needs, their spiritual needs, their psychological needs. So therefore, as educators, we need to creatively develop teaching learning activities that would satisfy the domains or the facets of the life of a student and be able to address whatever limitations DE has given us. We don't argue that DE is the most appropriate way or of teaching during the pandemic, but we also have to accept that there are limitations and it falls upon us, educators, to address this. Number two, we need to integrate holistic approaches to address welfare concerns of teachers and students. The sudden shift of distance education to distance education modality has placed stress and a toll on the mental health, on the physical health, on the psychological health of not only the students, but in the same way of our teachers. So, as educational leaders, we should have programs in place to address these kinds of concerns because these, at a larger sense, would ultimately impact the quality of the teaching learning experience. So, since we're talking about a multifaceted approach, I have come with an illustration of a diamond which has different facets or sides. And coming from the output of the Chartered College of Teaching, there were four main suggestions of how we can address these limitations or problems or challenges. And what are those? Number one, infrastructure upgrade, such that because there is now an over reliance on internet access, there is too much reliance on the use of internet, the computers, the laptops, and the iPad. We need to be able to carefully assess how students and teachers are using this and be able to help them, okay, gain access to these important infrastructures. So in one way, like for example, in my case, when we were working from home, I would still continue teaching. And as a form of infrastructure upgrade, my company actually gave us additional pay for us to be able to upgrade our internet plan into higher plans, which would give us higher bandwidth to be able to continue delivering courses any time of the day. Second, on the left side of the screen, flexibility of learning content. We cannot only rely on live content because we're interacting through the camera. We can have pre-recorded sessions which can be used by students on a demand basis. Third, basic digital literacy training. This is very important. We cannot expect our learners and our teachers to operate software, hardware, without teaching them the basic use and troubleshooting skills in the use of these devices and software. That has been a major finding in a lot of studies where teachers cannot navigate the use of, let's say, Zoom, Google Classroom, or other virtual learning teleconference platforms, and that negatively impacts the teaching learning experience. And on the administrative level, we can put in place certain policies that increase access to devices, such as providing financial assistance, loans, which can give better access for students and teachers to buy these devices, which they can use now to participate in distance education. So as part also of my declaration, here is now my complete list of references. And again, the main reference that I have used today comes from the Chartered College of Teaching in 2021. And I have made other cross-referencing with other references. So thank you for your time. I hope it was a fruitful discussion and God bless each one of you.